Thank you very much, Program Director. I know I have a very difficult task. I'm standing between you and lunch. And I thought I'll make it just 3 hours so that we can digest everything. All protocol observed. Mr. Mayor, our host Executive Mayor of Tshwane, Mayor Xolile, Your Excellencies present here, ambassadors and high commissioners, the executive mayors across our beautiful continent, special guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the South African Local Government Fraternity, I thank you for your presence here and the demonstrated commitment to a sustainable African future. The African Capital Cities Sustainability Forum, in its third installment, has achieved in Africa what perhaps other continents may still wish to achieve. That is, the gathering of leaders of capital cities on any continent is not surprising. We see this all the time. But that such a gathering should be about sustainability, climate, and African cooperation in local governance is indeed a feat worth celebrating. The fact that the majority of capital cities on the continent have heeded the call for collective leadership for a sustainable Africa is truly inspiring for all of us. It suggests that as the local government is the sphere closest to the people, it is indeed in good hands as we strive to align our planning and development to the global developments anchored on the SDGs, the African Agenda 2063, and our respective national priorities. It is essential to have a clear line of sight from our local activities, national and continental imperatives through the global commitments. Program Director, our sincere congratulations go to the City of Tshwane for once again hosting this critical event. I would like to draw your attention as delegates to 3 essential messages which I believe are very relevant to the conversation that we have today on sustainability. Firstly, the rapid rate of urbanization is our new normal. It has become critical that African cities build themselves today to withstand the service demands and pressures of a future where more than 60% of African population will reside in urban centers. Secondly, climate change has unearthed some of the largest threats to life as we know it on the globe, and more starkly in our own world as Africa. Program Director, we've listened to speakers this morning, and all of them continue to make one essential message, that the future we have today is not ours. We have borrowed it to our children. We need to look after it and make sure that we hand it over in a manner that will continue to guarantee sustainability. One of the greatest sons of Africa, the former Secretary General of United Nations, Kofi Annan, made this observation around climate change, that it is the biggest challenge of our time. He pointed out that it threatens the well-being of hundreds of millions of our people today and many billions more in future. It undermines the human rights to food, water, health, and shelter, and this challenge is felt more acutely by the poorest of the poor, found mostly in the developing world, of which Africa is an integral part. So therefore, mitigation adapting to climate change while driving local, national, and regional and global development goals in a world that is anticipated to be above 2 degrees and possibly closer to 4 degrees Celsius warmer will be much more difficult and certainly exponentially more expensive. It is also important to remember that while the effects of climate change are felt at a local level, characterized by extreme and erratic weather patterns as we have seen in our own country, famine, hunger, and disease continue to afflict many, and this will continue beyond our borders if there is no proper management. It is therefore critical that as leaders at local level, we join hands with other role players across all levels of government, across all regions, and indeed across all levels of society. Linked to these two is the third and final message that relates to multilateral cooperation. Multilateral cooperation on the continent must lead to Africa gaining improved access to development support that is aligned to our own interest as Africans. But essentially, it has to more importantly open the continent to itself, enhancing the exchange of lessons and good practice in our own South-South models that are far more reaching and with a sustained benefit. Program Director, having isolated these three messages, it is imperative that we note the inexplicable linkage between the first two issues, that is urbanization and climate change, and the importance of the third issue, and that is the issue of cooperation in ensuring sustainable development and a future that is resilient. In 2015, it is important to note that the world lauded the conclusion of the Paris Agreement that various speakers have referred to as the framework agreement under the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, in what is now referred to as a landmark agreement. The importance of support developing and least developed countries took center stage during those discussions, and other issues that were more prominent in the negotiations, as we all recall, related to increased ambition in emission reduction. We now strive to reduce the rise in global temperatures to a maximum of 2 degrees Celsius, enhancing investment in adaptation, and mandating the adoption of nationally determined contributions, what is commonly referred to as NDCs. Now, following Paris, countries rallied behind the agreement and rapidly began to deposit their NDCs. So too did we as Africans commit. This has been a remarkable groundswell of action towards accountability and the ethos of every party having a role to play in the contribution to make. So the post-COP21 era to date has seen the coalescing of a number of development imperatives under different thematic areas, including disaster, finance, safety, environmental protection, and although the largely majority of global commitments recognize the critical role of local governments, country-level NDCs have not been reflective of the central role of cities, particularly in the African capturing of NDCs. In recognizing this link, Program Director, between climate and urbanization, where rapid urbanization contributes to emission of greenhouse gases, and where the impacts of climate change are keenly felt in urban areas that have not developed appropriate mitigation and resilience measures. It is therefore important that cities be mobilized to enhance urban development that realizes mitigation opportunities and enhances resilience. Although African cities do not generally rank among the highest emitters of these emissions, cities in our own continent, such as Dar es Salaam, Lagos, Kigali, Johannesburg, etc., are rapidly occupying the space of being categorized as high emitters in the developed world. Burgeoning transport, waste, and energy demand sectors often both challenges and opportunities for concerted climate change responses. It has been clearly demonstrated that these cities and many of their counterparts are key drivers of economic development and social development. So it is therefore absolutely critical that they be supported in their growth and development. This must be done in a manner that equally enables them to make their own contributions to manage climate change. Program Director, it is becoming increasingly clear that the global climate change battle will ultimately be won or lost in world cities. Ours on the African continent are no different. Cities have a major role to play in the reduction of greenhouse gas emission, thus contributing to the fight against climate change. In a report from Sustainable Energy Africa in 2015, in our own case as South Africa, it revealed that 18 cities and towns are home to half of South Africa's population, almost 52%, while occupying only 4.5% of the country's landmass. They account for over a third of the national energy consumption and nearly half of national electricity consumption. They also consume half of the country's petrol and diesel reserves and produce approximately 70% of the country's economic wealth. Now, what does this mean? It's quite clear to us as SALGA that these urban spaces require coordinated, integrated, and sustainable development if they are to remain drivers of socio-economic development. But for us to take this big talk forward, what are the things that we need to do to assist cities to drive sustainable agenda? What are the levers available to us as cities to drive intercity collaboration and sustainable development to promote sustainability? Program Director, the most important lever for climate response is proven to be the benefit drawn from intercity learning and exchange, as well as adaptation of external good practices to fit localized context. In South Africa's case, for example, SALGA has fostered the exchange and proliferation of good practices adopted and adapted from other countries and local authorities within the SADC region. As SALGA, we are fostering relationship with ALAT in Tanzania, the Association of Local Authorities, BALA in Botswana, and further afield, the CLGF, Commonwealth Local Government Forum, and VNG, which is a sister association in Netherlands, the German Association of Cities in Europe, as well as with Canadian Federation of Local Authorities in North America, and many others. And all of these collaborative inter-association partnership, they are essential to facilitating cross-pollination of ideas and pooling of resources and expertise between South African municipalities and others in the world. We are engendering a culture of multilateral cooperation, which we believe within our own region as SADC will be very central to strengthening the role of associations in supporting their cities around this battle. Through avenues offered by UCLG and UCLG Africa, alongside other regional nodes of UCLG, as SALGA, we're strengthening our ability to expose our African cities to the global discourse on sustainable development. The South African case I mentioned here is a good example of how multilateral cooperation is a critical component of successful city-level contribution to implementing the global development agenda. For the NDCs to be successfully implemented, it is imperative that local government associations invest their efforts towards localization of the Paris Agreement and the NDCs. This localization essentially means that local government associations, as facilitators of relationships between different spheres of government to the benefit of cities and local government, must ensure the cascading of NDCs in a way that achieves the following three outcomes, which we should all seek around the NDCs, which is national determined commitments. Program Director, what are these three key outcomes which should aim to achieve in implementing localization? The first one is quantification and inclusion of city-level contribution to emission reduction efforts. This means that as local government association, we must support our cities to develop greenhouse gas inventories and track their emission reduction efforts across all municipal sectors and operations, such as waste, transport, energy, wastewater treatment, land transformation. The second commitment should be around target setting and reporting. Cities must set short and long-term targets and define emission reduction trajectory that spans the short term. For example, align these to 5-year IDPs, what we normally call in South Africa, integrated development plans, and also have appropriate monitoring, evaluation, and reporting systems in place to complement and feed into the national system. The last one being policy coherence. As associations of local government, we must assist both central and regional governments and their member cities to evaluate and harmonize policies and regulatory instruments, including those for special planning, to ensure policy coherence that enables us to localize our interventions. In conclusion, Program Director, as I have mentioned some of these aspects that require consistent representation and support of cities by the association, a key role for local government association is that of creating an enabling environment for cities and local governments to actively contribute and draw benefit from climate change response action. Essentially, this means association of local government need to facilitate multi-level governance with the aim of cascading and implementing the NDCs. Our central thesis, therefore, should be that national determined contributions are ineffectual if not implemented in a cohesive manner, horizontal across different sectors and vertically across multiple levels of governance. It has been SALGA's observation that integration in climate change action and sustainable urban development must follow both political and administrative paths. This means that organizational infrastructure for environmental management and climate-related structures in central and sub-national government must exist across all spheres of government and be supported by political leadership across all spheres. SALGA and its members, through its partnership with national and provincial government in our own country, as well as our partners within the region, nationally, in terms of cities, association, cities network, in our case, civil society and academia, we have begun to reap the benefits of vertical integration. It is this narrative that enables us to say that local government associations are central to the enhancement of integration in implementing NDCs. With these few words, I stand on behalf of South African local government community in recognizing the commendable steps taken by the African cities towards entrenching the tenets of the Paris Agreement. I also wish to emphasize that there is a treasure of lessons to be learned in this continent and encourage that the next city to host this forum expand the invitation to local government associations in the continent to make sure that greater integration horizontally and vertically is central to our success. Thank you very much.